So basically, I wanted to talk before I delve into my software. I wanted to talk about the basics when we talk about the climate domain. Now, specifically, everybody is talking about that we have to be carbon neutral by 2050. Now, what is the path to attaining this carbon neutrality? Now, if you look at the plot, you see these dark gray shaded areas. These represent the carbon emissions that are present there in the past, like 2010, from 2010 to 2021 and 2022. Now we are in 2023, and now the carbon emissions are represented here by a turquoise color. And what we have to do if we want to attain that carbon neutrality is that we have to reduce these carbon emissions. So you see there's continuous reduction which needs to take place. And in parallel, what we need to do is to increase the green activities that contribute positively to the environment. So basically, this is the removal of greenhouse gas emissions. And here we are talking about the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions when we are focusing on the turquoise blue area. And when both of these cancel out each other, so when they are equal, like for example, the carbon emissions equal the green activities that are contributing positively to the environment, we will reach the state of carbon neutrality, which we intend to reach as per Paris Climate Accord by 2050. Now, I would like to differentiate between two terms. Normally, when I see people talking about carbon offsets and carbon credits, they tend to use it interchangeably, but there's a difference. Now, if you focus on the slide before, basically these areas where we are reducing the carbon emissions, they contribute to carbon credits. And when we talk about these green areas, which are contributing positively to the environment, they basically comprise the carbon offsets. And of course, the names of the markets that will follow is when you talk about the reduction in GHG emissions, there will be carbon credit market. And when you talk about the green activities, the green shaded areas, there would be the carbon offset market. Now, I'd like to elaborate this a bit more. For example, you have company A. Now, the carbon emissions of this company A are like, let's assume 1,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. Now, tons of CO2 equivalent is just a unit in which we measure the carbon emissions, for example, the same way like you use kilometers to measure distance. Now, the government in which this company is present, the country, the government governing that country, it has a certain goal. Let's say it wants to reduce X amounts of, tons of CO2 equivalent from the atmosphere that year. So in accordance with that plan, what the government does is that it allows company A to only emit 800 tons of CO2 equivalent and not 1,000. So this company has to reduce around 200 tons of CO2 equivalent. Now, this permit that the government has issued to this company is referred to as the carbon credit. It involves a reduction in the carbon emissions. Now, this company in itself might have its own personal goal, like, I will be removing, let's say, 500 tons of CO2 equivalent this year. And for that, let me change my internal processes. Let me use renewable energy. And with that, it was able to accomplish, let's say, 400 tons of CO2 equivalent reduction in the carbon emissions. So what is the surplus? It was meant to reduce 200, but it managed to reduce 400. And so it has an excess of 200 tons of CO2 equivalent. Now, this excess can be issued as carbon credits. Now, when you focus on the pledge this company had taken, the goal of the company was 500. It managed to reduce 400, but 100 still remains. So what it does, it goes to a green project, let's say a solar farm contributes to it, or goes to reforestation and contributes to it in such a way that the emission reduction taking place by it would be equivalent to 100 tons of CO2 equivalent. And this is referred to as the carbon offset. So basically, you have two different categories when you talk about the climate space, the carbon credit market and the carbon offset market. Now, I'd like to just briefly explain the carbon credit market. This is just governed by governments and companies, large corporates. When we talk about government, so it's a cap and trade system where the government has a certain limit, upper limit, whereby, you can emit carbon emissions, and above that you cannot. And when we talk about companies, they might have different internal goals along with the government goal that or the permit that they are tackling with. Now, this is specific to a certain jurisdiction. It can be specific to a certain industry, let's say the finance industry, for example. Now, what happens, assume that there is this organization, it had 24,000 tons of CO2. and an excess of 4,000. So what it does, it issues carbon credits of that 4,000 tons of CO2 to another organization. Now, this organization in turn just bought it, but it does not need it. So it issues 3,000 to another organization from it and 1,000 to another. And so on, this resales take place. Now, the primary market here, when we talk about the carbon credit market, would be the first organization that initially issues the carbon credits. And the secondary market would be the resales that are taking place from this market. Now, when we talk about the issues present in this market, what you see is that the parent organization, the first organization that initially issued the carbon credits, it can't keep track of the resales that are happening. Okay, so this one's this organization sold to this one. What happened after that? What happened after that? So it has no idea when it's doing its accounting and reporting as to which entity is the last one in the carbon value chain. So there is lack of traceability. Then there can be inaccurate accounting taking place. For example, this organization had a permit of, let's say, 500 tons of CO2. So, but its emissions in reality were around 3,500. So what it did, it bought 3,000 from another organization, but in the end, it sold 2,000 to another organization. Now, if it changes its data or somehow commits fraud, how are we get to know what is basically this organization doing? We have to believe the data that it reports. And there is no way to keep an oversight on whether that data is accurate or not. So, and again, there is lack of transparency. Why? Because let's say the last entity or the last organization that receives the carbon permit, they don't know, perhaps the issuing organization, perhaps the data has been changed along the way. So they are not aware of that. And what people want is more transparency to know the issuing organization, to know that the data has not been changed midway. Now let's focus on the carbon offset market in contrast to the carbon credit market, which is highly regulated. The carbon offset market is not regulated, comprises of governments, companies, and individuals. It's not confined to a jurisdiction or an industry. I'll just go through it briefly. When we talk about the green project, let's say the green project is enabling a removal of 20,000 tons. There are certain characteristics that need to be associated with this green project, which are very important. Out of those characteristics, two, I would say vintage and verification standard are very important. The verification standard is, let's say, the third party, which is verifying the green project, how authentic it is, perhaps the methodologies that they are following. Now, this green project does the issuance of carbon offsets, which we saw before as well. And so perhaps this organization comes, it buys the carbon offsets to offset its carbon footprint, 5,000. Now, another organization comes, and what it does, it buys around 10,000, but it does not want to offset its carbon footprint. It wants to resell this carbon offset in the market. So perhaps at a higher price. And so what happens is that this carbon offset is then locked by the green organization because it has not been offset till now. The footprint has not been offset till now. It's still in circulation. And so it sells it to another organization, let's say 1,000 it sells. And this organization again sells it to another organization, which is offsetting its carbon footprint. And once it does that, then a certificate is issued by, let's say, this green project, and the carbon offsets associated with it are retired. Now, let's say the organization sells another ton to an individual, another 3,000 to someone else to offset the carbon footprint. The issues here would be the same as you saw in the carbon credit market, but because this is also an unregulated market, what can happen is that this organization, which created an impact of, let's say, reduction or removal of 5,000 tons of CO2, it claims to the media or to bodies that, I have reduced 10,000 tons of CO2. And basically, it is indulging in greenwashing. And there is no way you can point that out. Now, at the same time, somebody can create a duplicate certificate. And again, there can be no check, on this certificate duplication that has happened. Now, how can blockchain help in this? So everybody knows that the blockchain, when we talk about a public blockchain, it is a permanent database. All the data can be seen by everybody. The data cannot be changed. And non-repudiation implies that if a certain transaction or certain data has been recorded on the blockchain platform, we know who is the source of that particular data. Now, when we talk about the problems, I talked about lack of traceability. So when you're recording all the transactions on the blockchain platform, the data is permanent. So let's say A sold to B, B sold to C, and so on. All that can be seen on the blockchain platform. The reporting tools, when we talk about inaccurate reporting, you can build reporting tools to pick up data from the blockchain platform. The data is authentic. When we talk about lack of transparency, I mentioned it's public blockchains allow everybody to read the data. So we bring about transparency. Now, for certificate duplication, we'll have to use artificial intelligence to raise alerts whenever duplicate certificate is on the blockchain, for example. And when we talk about greenwashing, so any claim that an organization is making that, my product is so much environmentally friendly, or this is the kind of environmental impact that I have made. So it should back it by data, let's say, and that data is on the blockchain platform. So everybody can see the data that is backing, and they can be convinced, that the claim is authentic. Now, what do we do here? What is our solution? So basically, we are developing DCarbonX, which is a blockchain-based carbon credit market. And what we have already provided is a carbon offset platform where we bring different green projects. So if, let's say, the companies who are in DCarbonX, they want to offset the emissions, and they can do so through CNet Zero, which is our carbon offset platform, which is already launched, and it is open to everybody like governments, companies, and individuals. And this we expect to launch by March or April 23. That's all from my end, Brother Mustafa. Thank you.
Thank you.